This season of anime has been met with a bit of a mixed reception. It definitely feels like one of the quieter seasons, especially coming off the massive releases that spring and summer 2025 did have. But honestly, it's not really the case. There's still a few hidden gems and honestly a really big amount of shows that are really solid. So without further ado, let's talk about fall 2025 and the anime that are airing currently. My Friend's Little Sister Has It In For Me is a pretty standard romantic comedy premise. What would you do if your bro sis had the hots for you? Well, most people would not break the bro code, but obviously our main character Akiteru is going to break that. This show is rife with rom-com tropes such as an arranged relationship between Akiteru and Mashiro, who is actually his cousin, so double points if you had that on your bingo card. After the first 3 episodes, the humor definitely carries the show, as well as some ecchi moments here and there that keep you invested for those of you who have gooner tendencies. Even with clear tonal clashes and despite not doing anything remotely different, My Friend's Little Sister Has It In For Me serves as a relatively laid-back rom-com that gets a few chuckles out of me here and there. God damn, get a look at those moves! Wandance is a show that has been panned by most because of its decision to use CGI for the dancing scenes. Besides that usage of CG though, it's kind of honestly fine. There's a real message here, as it talks about how our main character finds solace in dancing as he deals with his stutter. It also allows for him to express himself in ways that words may sometimes not allow him to do so. I feel like a lot of people have harped on the CGI and completely looked past the message of the show, and that's kind of honestly ironic. Even as someone who is a major critic of the ludicrous usage of CGI at times, when a show has a real message to it, I kind of try my best to look past it. So for that reason, I highly recommend giving Wandance a chance, even despite its goofy looking dancing, especially given that most of the animated show is in 2D, so its dancing portions are the only thing that really stick out as quote-unquote goofy. On the other hand, a show that stuck out to me because of its enigmatic art style and fluid movement was Sanda. I just love the line work and how vibrant it is, and that's because Sanda was created by the creator of Beastars, Paru Itagaki, and dare I say that this is even better than their prior work. It has an absolutely bizarre concept that follows our protagonist named Sanda, who is actually a long-lost descendant of Santa Claus. Shiori, a girl in his class, is aware of his lineage and tries to find her friend Ono with his help. Sanda instead thinks that she's coming on to him initially when she's actually trying to actively kill him so that he transforms into Santa Claus. Or not so much kill, but just by unlocking the conditions of the curse that make him into Santa Claus. So Shiori stabs Sanda, and the blood on his shirt essentially serves as a red thing that makes him transform into Santa Claus. Right off the bat, the art style really services this absurd concept. It works hand in hand with the weird nature of Sanda and Shiori's partnership, as well as the world they live in, and the animation is absolute heat. Sanda acts as the voice of reason, whereas Shiori works as an agent of chaos, so much so that she even tries to blow up the school. What the fuck? It tackles some serious issues regarding Japanese society, such as the declining birth rates, which have been a point of discussion for the past 2 decades. With that in mind, this world is crafted as a futuristic dystopia version of Japan in which adults control the lives of Japanese youth in order to tackle the dwindling birth rate. The show is the perfect example of when a show commits to the bit, as it dives headfirst into the absurdity. Not only that, but it has a lot of action and comedy to supplement the darker tones and moments of the series. As a result, it happens to be one of the best shows this season and of this year. Oh, this show looks pretty nice. Oh, it's a romantic comedy? Oh, it's just a psyop by the Japanese government to encourage workplace relationships. Jokes aside, My Awkward Senpai is a romantic comedy between the blunt and stubborn presenting Kanawa and the freshly hired Kamigawa. This is a show directed for young adults and adults in general, and while the idea of a workplace rom-com is pretty played out, the art style does help it stick out a little bit. The concept of the awkward Kanoa trying to woo over Kamigawa is enough to carry its own weight. Another romance show that has been really dragged through the mud is Let's Play, and I cannot for the life of me understand why. The art style is beautiful and the concept is fresh and new. Despite all of the catering they've done towards NEETs, it's been met with pretty bad critical disdain. The major complaint I have seen is the art style, which I think is a crime because people are just panning it solely for this reason, but it just kind of caters to anime fans of old, reminding me of the simpler line art we got in the 90s and early 2000s. I'm pretty shocked, and I feel like reviewing this in a full video down the line here, as it's kind of a beautiful show in its own right. Samara, who goes by Sam, is a video game developer with a chronic illness and anxiety. She works to make a game called Ruminate. Her game gets a bad review from a YouTuber critic named Martial Law, which in turn has her Indigeneer getting review bombed by his fans. Sam's new next door neighbor then happens to be Marshall, and it's a romance story with rivals to lovers, a bunch of love triangles, and also talks about aspirations, dreams, and overcoming anxiety. For any creatives, this show is truly a breath of fresh air, and you can self-insert into the struggles of Sam. And it really just does suck to see something so well crafted be thrown away to the wayside just because of its kind of visuals. Also, is that the bite of 87? That's the kind of humor and references you can expect from this series, and if there's any other show that deserves a second chance this season, it's Let's Play, so I implore you to go give it a chance with an open heart and mind. Past the monster meat Milady looked like another typical fantasy romance show that we've kind of seen a big rise of in the past couple of years, but I'm happy to report that it's not only that, but it has a dash of Shokugeki no Soma. It feels like each time one of these series comes out, they just change out the quirky hobby that the heroine has, but for Malfira, it actually kind of works. She is enamored with monster meat despite its bad reputation, and she shares this love with the dashing Duke named Aristide. The Duke plays your typical archetype in these kinds of shows, having a bad reputation with others but is actually a kind and loving man. The stereotypical archetypes do not really bog down past the monster meat Milady, and it kind of actually works. The episodes fly by and I find myself wanting to consume more meat. Isekai shows have become a staple of every season, but unfortunately there's a series that has been unable to rise above the predecessors. Instead of being bold and doing something fresh and new, they've opted to play it safe, a worrying trend in the Isekai genre. It is pretty laid back, and I can forgive it for its shortcomings because it's something that you can just turn on and kind of relax with, as it's about a guy essentially foraging for materials. There's definitely an audience for it, but it's not something that's gonna exactly wow you. As for the Banished court magician aims to become the strongest, well, that's everything I've come to absolutely hate in the fantasy genre, isekai or not. It is way too much of the same exact thing over and over again. It just has every single stereotype beat for fucking beat. The support magic user, Alec, gets fired for being supposedly incompetent, but then runs off to start his own party. Stop me if you've heard that before, because Jesus Christ, it happens so many times now, it's annoying. Again, it would be fine if there were not a slew of these kinds of shows coming out as of late, but unfortunately this series does not do anything different or well enough to warrant any kind of high praise. Mechanical Mary is a rom-com that follows the wealthy and successful Arthur, who's super suspicious of everyone as a result of his success. Well, he has a valid reason because he kind of gets kidnapped all the fucking time. As such, the butler for Arthur tries to hire a mechanical maid but is unable to get one and instead hires Mary, who offers to act like a robot maid because she's deep in debt. This story has the basics of your typical liar reveal storyline, with Mary's secret eventually going to put a wedge between her and Arthur. It is a serviceable shoujo romance that I've not seen a lot of people talking about. Inexpressive Kashiwada and Expressive Ota is about two contrasting personalities clashing with one another, as Ota tries to break through Kashiwada's exterior to find out what she's thinking. This is quite literally the question of whether or not opposites can attract. Hands Off is a show that my lawyer has advised that I don't talk too much about on YouTube, especially because I cannot show anything that is shown within every 30 seconds of this show. If you're a fan of ecchi, you'll absolutely love Hands Off, but as the title says, keep your hands off your penis. Also, whoever thought of the title, Little Miss Vampire Can't Suck Right, might need their hard drive checked. In this world, supernatural beings are commonplace. This sets up all kinds of romantic shenanigans. One note I will state about this series is that our protagonist, Otori, is quite literally a self-insert for the viewer. That's not because that's what I think, it's literally what it is. His character is so bare bones that he doesn't even have a mouth in most of the shots that he is in. Despite that, there's enough charm and wit to carry Little Miss Vampire Can't Suck Right. Listen, if I had a nickel for every single time I've watched a Reincarnated Villainess story, I'm gonna be honest, I'd be a millionaire. This trope has been one of the more repeated ones in the isekai genre as of late, and the dark history of the Reincarnated Villainess is more in line with the previous series that have covered the subject matter. Now, I do say that, but there is one thing that it does differently, with Konoha being reincarnated into her own fantasy world. Yes, that's right. I think this is the most believable setup, with her past knowledge of her childhood romance story being used to alter her current situation. Also, it's just very clear that our protagonist is a clear and set up Fujoshi, and it's kind of funny to see that kind of character. She's kind of all-powerful until she finds herself enamored with Yomi, an ally of hers in this world, but someone that she has no prior knowledge of to writing this character. That dynamic is what makes it deviate a tad from previous iterations of Villainess stories, and it does it well enough to keep you invested. With You, Our Love Will Make It Through is, well, it's a furry romance is what it is. Mari, a human, finds herself swooning for a beast folk named Hidaka. In this world, love between humans and beast folk is prejudiced against, and the story hinges on them having to fight for their love in a world unapproving of it. Yeah, this is a good show. I might be a furry now. There are plenty of isekai shows that have come and gone, but I am really hoping a wild last boss appeared won't fall into the same pitfalls as previous series. It quite literally gripped me immediately, the same way that Overlord had, and there are quite a few similarities between the two series. Lufas is an omnipotent leader and video game character in the game called X-Gate, and when she is defeated by the 7 heroes, they are sealed off. The player of Lufas is given a second chance to continue playing by the system, which transports them into the game of X-Gate. Yes, I know I just started talking, or ended talking about how there's a bunch of pitfalls that isekai series can go into, and having a similar premise like Log Horizon and Sword Art Online surely could see kind of deviations and comparisons, but I think a wild last boss has appeared is really solid. 200 years have passed since they got essentially reincarnated, and the world is completely different from what they had previously dealt with. With none of the resources or allies they had prior, they must climb back to the top, albeit with souped up abilities and skills that make them essentially the strongest being in this universe. This series shot up my watch list, and I eagerly await more episodes as the character of Lufas has become one of my favorites in years past. They are cunning, but not all-knowing. They are powerful, but at some point they're going to hit a wall with power scaling. They have actual emotions that flesh them out, and character dynamics that are visited as Lufas tries to reunite with their companions from the game, the 12 Stars of Heaven. If you want a series with that same feel as Overlord, A Wild Last Boss Appeared is a great show that is 100% in that kind of same vein as Overlord. A Mangaka's Weirdly Wonderful Workplace is about a shoujo manga artist named Nana. I'm gonna be completely honest, I have not seen a single person talk about this show, and none of my friends who watch anime have even heard of it, which is a real shame because it's a really nice workplace comedy. Having your main character as a creative allows for all kinds of artistic liberties, which are certainly taken here. A Mangaka's Weirdly Wonderful Workplace is both entertaining yet relaxing at the same time, a very laid-back show to unwind after a long day of work, while watching someone essentially struggle to work. Sound the alarms, we've got women who love women, that is right, full-blown Yuri everyone. Come one and come all, as this monster wants to eat you is sure to wow you. Yeah, right off the bat, we're shown our main character Hinako and this internal conflict regarding her family or lack thereof. Everyone else is having fun with their family, but she's all by her lonesome. That is until a woman named Shiori emerges from the ocean, this sort of love interest for Hinako. I love the way that when Hinako daydreams, she goes into this serene space underwater. It really services the themes of loneliness, as she's consumed by the tide. Shiori is revealed to be a yokai who has wanted to consume Hinako, as there are also a bunch of other yokai who want to eat her. Shiori instead wants to wait until Hinako is more delicious and vows to protect her in the meantime. Shiori compares it to that of a pig or a cow and how they are nurtured for a precise time before being slaughtered. This story is a great analogy for depression and how it can be all-consuming. Despite those heavy themes, there are some lighter beats with comic relief characters and scenes to uplift the show. I especially love the way that Hinako recognizes that her depression is isolating her from Miko, one of her only friends. The shot of Hinako lying in bed and feeling lost and isolated before a hand reaches into the water to grab and pull her out of it is what sold me. The emotional storytelling and romantic nature between this being that wants to protect her but still hurts her is a beautiful metaphor for how relationships can be. Dusk beyond the end of the world. Wow. We've seen some recent hard hitters such as Dr. Stone as they tackle a dystopian world after the fall of civilization, but wow man, this one just knocks it out of the park. Akira wakes up from his cryogenic slumber and is rescued by some citizens of this war-torn society. It turns out that the world is now governed by a group called OWEL, or OWL. Some grunts from OWEL come to investigate about Akira and take him prisoner before he's saved by Yugure, an android. What I'm going to say here has huge ramifications for the appeal of the show to anybody, including myself. An android girl cutting through enemies with a lightsaber is just badass. Now take the cool factor and multiply it by 1,000 as Yugure uses a literal railgun made out of her own body to explode the enemy. Yeah, that's just peak. Akira then recognizes that Yugure kind of resembles his old girlfriend from the old world, and then out of the blue, Yugure asks Akira to marry her. This kind of sci-fi mystery gets me hooked 9 times out of 10, and watching Akira and Yugure navigate this apocalypse-like world as they grow closer to one another just fills me up with so much joy. Everything from the plot, the characters, animation, and even the cool factor has me hooked, and I hope it gets the recognition it deserves this season. Hero without a class, who even needs skills, tells you everything that's wrong with it from the title alone. Yeah, that's it. That's all I'm gonna say. Now, listen, I was not expecting to like Chitose is in the Ramune bottle, but color me fucking shocked. Every time a studio goes the extra mile to produce a 30 to 60 minute premiere to give context for the show or to build the show, I immediately show a level of appreciation for it. It allows for proper storytelling that often hinders most series, as they blaze through the foundational steps needed to craft a proper hero's journey or story as a whole. And I think there's a huge misconception with Chitose is in the Ramune bottle, and it's kind of exactly about who is the protagonist. While it is an ensemble cast, it is Chitose and Kenta who are both the focal points of this story. And honestly, there's been a lot of discourse that's come up as a result of this, as the neat character Kenta not being the sole focus has kind of pissed people off. And I think there's a lot of discourse that's come up as a result of this with the neat character Kenta not being that sole focus. But I think that's exactly what the point is, with Chitose and the other so-called perfect characters revealing their struggles and hardships so that Kenta can then learn to empathize with them. It also shows how Kenta is helped out of his self-deprecating ways and assisted on his path to self-improvement. And I think that when people are looking in a world of black and white, they don't see the grays, as Chitose and Kenta are two sides of the same coin, with each other trying to strive to be their perfect selves. That is genuinely what has not been taken from this series, and it's the dynamic between Chitose and Kenta that really keeps me entertained. Sure, there are romances between Chitose and his so-called harem, but it's these moments where we see not only Kenta but Chitose grow that the story properly progresses. In a world where our perception has us thinking that the world revolves around us, this show highlights the struggles and depression that other people might hide behind the surface, as well as how we might be able to relate with one another through open lines of communication. This is what really makes Chitose and the Ramune bottle stick out, and for great reasons. Also, Chitose bashes in a window. Yano-Kun's Ordinary Days follows a story of Florence Nightingale syndrome essentially, with the clumsy Yano being taken care of by Kyoko. They start to bond over her helping mend his wounds, and it's pretty much as straightforward as that. Dad is a hero, mom is a spirit, I'm a reincarnator. This is a light novel title. This kind of seemed like it would be par for the course in terms of isekai or fantasy shows, but honestly this family dynamic carries it pretty okayly. The animation and character design may be more on the typical and flat side, but the reincarnated Ellen having knowledge from her past life as a scientific researcher is pretty intriguing. It provides a logical leap in terms of her capabilities rather than her being all powerful out of nowhere. The only critique I can state is that this show literally doesn't go anywhere. Despite her powers, Ellen doesn't really do much, which is fine, but if you're expecting the show to wow you with its plot development, I'm sorry, but it just won't. What it lacks for in that, it kind of makes up for with its charm. Speaking of charm, Tojima Wants to Be a Kamen Writer took me completely by surprise, especially as they gave subtitles for an inner monologue for a goddamn bear. I absolutely love the concept of a man chasing their boyhood dream past their so-called prime. Even more so, I myself am a huge fan of Kamen Rider. On the verge of quitting on his dream, Tojima must take up the mantle of Kamen Rider, as he spots a bunch of thugs acting like they work for Shocker. The absurd comedy from the show is not only a great satire, but an homage to Kamen Rider and the genre at large. One thing that really elevates the show as well, though, is the soundtrack, which really pumps you up as a 40-year-old man starts blasting thugs with the moves of Kamen Rider like Kamen Punch and Kamen Kick. Everything in my brain tells me I shouldn't like it as much as I do because it is in fact a satire, but because it's an homage, my heart tells me it is fantastic. The second episode solidified that, as it only further expands upon the impact of Kamen Rider as a whole, with a little girl coming home crying after being bullied by a bunch of boys at school. Her father then shows her the first female writer, and this inspires her to stand up for herself and to be just like her. And I'm sorry, but I swear to God, this chokes me up every time. There's something about seeing her father share his love for the series under a feminist message that just makes me cry and choke up every time. Listen, this show may not seem like much, but something about Tojima Wants to Be a Kamen Writer, albeit through the mass amounts of absurdity, has shown that it has a lot of heart. There's a sense of childlike idolization and wonder that just pulls at my heartstrings, and this is my favorite show of the past year. My status as an assassin obviously exceeds the heroes, comes right at the gate with some amazing fantasy music and an opening fight that sets the tone early. Soon after we see our protagonist in this future kind of area, Oda Akira gets to where he was in that intro, as his entire class is transported from the real world to a fantasy world called Morrigan. This isekai trope is tried and true, but one thing that establishes the quality of this particular isekai is the effort they put into this soundtrack. And there's a reason for it, as Satoshi Igarashi is a key part of that as the composer for Astral Chain and part of the music department for Nier Automata. Music sets the mood and tone right off the bat, and it is just amazing. It feels like a Dark Souls boss fight, and we've literally just gotten into this fantasy world. For those reasons, I was invested, and I'm so glad that I am, because the somewhat different animation style and character design also makes it stand out. As for the plot, Akira realizes that his stats greatly triumph the stats of the so-called hero. He then recognizes how problematic this could be, and uses concealed presence as he suspects something is amiss about the so-called Demon Lord threat. Akira continues to gather information until he is seen, despite his concealed presence skill, by a knight named Saren. Saren states that he's not on the side of the king and queen, and offers to help train Akira so that he can get stronger and return home. The only thing that Saren asks for in return is to hear about the other world. The plot is something that actually progresses pretty quickly, and it doesn't feel like a simple rehash of previous works. It very quickly establishes that it's trying to tell a story here, especially as it states that the class was brought here at the cost of a great sacrifice. Yet they don't exactly state what that cost was whatsoever, leaving it a mystery. Especially as Akira is not exactly all-powerful, but just powerful in general, with some kind of limiter that reins him in. This is what all stories need, stakes. Otherwise it would simply turn into power fantasy like solo leveling. It's a kind of fantasy show that I've been looking forward to for several years, even if some have come very close to reaching that mark. After 2 episodes, it's my favorite fantasy of the year, right next to A Wild Last Boss has appeared. Touring After the Apocalypse is a visually striking show that has 2 girls visiting the ruins of Japan. This season really has a lot of post-apocalyptic worlds, and out of all of them, this is the one with the most flair in terms of visuals. It follows your typical cute girls doing cute things, but even with that, there are stories told about those affected by the apocalypse that bring you to tears. Also a fucking tank. The end of episode 2 has me absolutely reeling, and it feels like another show unfortunately swept under the rug this season. Its focus on the visuals and weaving in dramatic stories keeps you invested in a great way and has been my comfort show while editing this video. With all of that in mind, there are shows aplenty for fans of anime this season, and don't let anyone tell you there isn't. If any of the series stuck out to you, feel free to check them out and let me know what you thought in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe for weekly reviews of anime, film, and TV. I've been Siren's End, and see ya.